starting lineup of your favorite show. At producer, 5'11" from Blanchester, the Cow Killer, Casey McAllister. And comic engineer, standing at 4'8", the pride of the West Side, Elliot Rearing. And your host, weighing 150 pounds, soaking wet, from Hamilton, Ohio, Ace Fowler.
All right, well, welcome into a lovely Wednesday edition to Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. I'm Trace Fowler, joined as always by Elliot Rearing, Casey McAllister. Lindsay's going to be in the house today to do a little moderating, I'm sure. There's a lot to talk about. Today's the day that I'm supposed to stay on time. We're not supposed to go over the 15-minute segments because we're going to be on the radio, and we're bringing on some folks that are used to the radio here in just a minute. Maybe I can get some tips, but I just don't know how in the world we're supposed to keep things to 15-minute segments today, and to be quite frank, that might not happen. If you're on X.com last night, you know what the story is. The story is, what do you make of Elly De La Cruz? We'll get into that. We'll talk about that in just a moment with the Brenna-Men. Marty and Tom will be on the airwaves in just some short time. We'll have overreactions, I'm sure, at some point during the show. And we'll top it off by mentioning the Cincinnati Bengals and DJ Reader's comments about what he had to say about his experience with that franchise in regards to free agency. Well, we'll get right into it because their time is valuable. I'm going to give them the floor. I'm not going to spew my opinion, so you can't say that I had any kind of influence over these two individuals at all. Marty, Tom, welcome into the show. Early risers today. So I'm glad to see you bright and early here on Off the Bench. You know what the topic's going to be, fellas. I'm just going to give you kind of the open floor here. You know the situation that happened with Elly De La Cruz. You have two different sides. It seems like such a it's not political in nature, but it seems like where we're at today with our politics. You're either on one side of the aisle. Elly De La Cruz can almost do no wrong. He's 22 years old. You've heard the story. And then you have, obviously, maybe on the other possible end, that this guy should be an MLB superstar. We'll start with Marty. I'll just give you the floor. What do you make of Elly De La Cruz after the performance last night and just overall in general?
Well, Trace, I think that that there are people who will say, well, given the nature of the weather conditions in Philadelphia, it's nothing to get overly excited about. Well, everybody else had to play on the same field, the Phillies and the Reds. I think that it's legitimate, even though you're talking after 5 games, because some of the things that we saw after he took Major League Baseball by storm in the first 30 days of the season last year, only to end up striking out almost 34% of the time for the time in which he was in the big leagues, have cropped up again. His defensive play has been at times careless. His offensive time, they talked about his inability to hit breaking balls, sliders, and curveballs. Well, he's been to the plate 20 official times this season, and 50% of those times he has struck out. I understand, because of this kid's natural talent, the desire for him to improve to the point where this organization doesn't have to answer questions about him, because he is such an exciting player to watch. I think the one thing he's got working in his favor, unfortunately, are the suspension of the Marte kid and then the Arroyo kid injuring himself, shoulder, elbow, whatever it was, and he's out for the rest of the year. They don't have anybody else. So whereas they might have been quick to pull the trigger in trying to determine how they go about fixing him, now they really have no choice but to continue running him out there at shortstop with Matt McLain still out. So I think he's going to have plenty of time to work on the things that he desperately needs to improve upon to be a good player. But if he's going to continue to play defensively the way he has, along with his inability to hit somewhat better than what he hit last year, then I think people have to realize that this kid is going to be criticized heavily until we see some improvement.
All right. Tom?
Look, the general manager, Nick Kroll, made this very clear even before spring training started. He said, look, these young players, yes, it's a concern. How will they be in their second year after, by and large, every one of them having very impressive first years? Yes, they had their ups and downs, and yes, they had their slumps and highs and lows. But I mean, collectively and individually, it's a very impressive, talented group. But Nick Kroll said that because we have so much depth, and as my dad pointed out, that's changed now because of suspensions or injuries. But he said there will be guys that end up in the minor leagues, and most fans are going to be saying, you got to be kidding me. Look, I never bought the hype, and I never buy the hype of anybody. My dad and I were talking about this topic the other day as it relates to the kid who's a wide receiver at Ohio State that everybody's talking about, as the next coming of Marvin Harrison Jr., and he hadn't even played in the game yet, Jeremiah Smith. And, you got to go out and prove it. And so De La Cruz is in a situation where he's still very young. He's very raw. I just think we need to take a deep breath. The flashy stuff, that's unfortunately the nature of the way a lot of kids are coming up into the big leagues. Can I be on ESPN play of the day? And can I, instead of planting my feet and throwing the ball like you see McLean do, can I just do it off my off foot and sling it over there, and then it ends up in right field? So I would just take a deep breath. He had a bad game. He's not been off to a good start in the field or at the plate, but let's just ride it out a little bit.
Marty, you made mention yesterday that you didn't believe in the idea of perhaps learning on the job or learning at the big league level. Could you kind of expand upon that and what you mean by those that may suggest that it's okay for Elly to kind of get his feet wet and continue to learn because he's only 22-year-old playing Major League shortstop on a day-in, day-out basis?
Well, I mean, Trace, if they're talking, and I want to make sure people understand, when I talk about learning at the big league level, I'm talking about the thing that I will accept is, okay, you're in the big leagues now. Dusty Baker used to say, these kids are now playing with a second deck on the ballpark. A great way to put it for a man who is one of the neatest guys I've ever known. That part I'll buy. Learn the way big leaguers carry themselves. Learn the way you conduct yourself in the public eye as a major leaguer. But I do not agree that, okay, now he's in the big leagues. Now we're going to teach him how to play the position. Or now that kind of stuff should be done in the minor leagues. Once again, I point up gladly the fact that I'm bearing down on 82 years old now. And back in the day, I hate to do this, but this is the way it should be anyway right now. By the time you get to the big leagues, you should be so ingrained with the way you comport yourself at your position that you don't need to be taught that. That should be taught in the minor leagues. When I hear people say, well, he's going to learn how to play this position, I'll buy that if it's a change in positions, and you do that starting in spring training. That's not enough time, but at least they're getting you ready to play when it counts. So I don't put any stock in he's got to learn the position. We accept his mistakes. He doesn't need to learn the position as shortstop. He's played there a lot. He knows what it takes. Tom made the great point. He made a bad throw last night on a guy that was not running hard, is incapable of any degree of speed going to first base, which should have been a routine out because he had all the time in the world to plant his feet and throw, and that guy's out by 10 steps. He had to make a flashy throw, sideline off his back foot, and he almost threw the ball into the seats behind first base. I don't buy that part of it. I think you learn the nuances of your position, and you learn that when you start out in rookie ball and then go to A and double A and triple A if you stop all the spots along the way. If you don't know how to do it by then you're not ready to play in the major leagues.
Tom, similar situation. You obviously brought up Matt McLain. I think that if Matt McLain were to be healthy, I prefer your opinion or get your take on this. Many might suggest that Elly needs time to what Marty disagrees with to be able to get his feet wet in the big leagues, and over time, based off of his skill set, his traits, everything that he's able to do, he will ultimately be the better shortstop out of all of the young core that have come up between Noelvi Marte, Matt McLain. Now, obviously, Arroyo still a little bit of a ways, but he's not really been brought up a ton yet because he only played at A-ball in Dayton last year, so he's not really been on the radar. To be fair, though, Arroyo is not as far behind maybe as he once thought to be because of the spring that he had and way he looks. But to be fair, how much time do you think Elly has at the shortstop position to quote unquote, I guess, figure it out?
Well, let me just back up for 1 second. It's a good question, Trace, but I back up 1 second because nobody's more guilty of this than me. I love the guys, and I used to say it when I was doing all the time. I love the idea when teams try to find guys that are versatile. And back, in when I was still doing games regularly, probably the best example of that could have been either Ben Zobrist or Chris Bryant for a slugger kind of a player, right? I mean, they play him in left field, they play him at third, they play him at first, they play him in right. They move him all over the place. And I love it. I think it's great, and I think teams ought to do it. The flip side, however, is, let's face it, last year De La Cruz was switching back and forth all the time, shortstop to third base, shortstop to third base. He was doing a lot of that last year. I felt like the Reds should have had him doing some of the outfield stuff this year because for me, ultimately, that's where he's going to play. When all is said and done, I think he's going to be an outfielder. He reminds me, as far as skill set wise, so much of a young Vladimir Guerrero, although he's faster than Guerrero. I think you put him in a less demanding position because you will have ultimately other guys. You have guys right now, if McClain comes back, that could play shortstop. It's tough for a guy when you're asking him. And look, we've seen this with the Reds on other players. They did this with Senzel, where they moved him around a lot, and I thought they did it. They kept changing his positions. They've done it with India. It's a damned if you do, damned if you don't. Do you want a guy to play one position all the time and just leave him there and never think about it? And it doesn't matter who we got coming up in the minor leagues. This is our guy. Or do you want to ask him to do a bunch of things, but if you do that, you're going to have to live with the possibility that he might make some mistakes in the field?
Marty, you got a chance to watch Barry Larkin's career pretty much in full. And I think that every time that Elly De La Cruz is mentioned in some kind of negative light, some of the fan base points to Barry Larkin as a point of emphasis of saying, hey, look, here's a guy that made a lot of errors at the beginning of his career, ended up being a Hall of Famer, Gold Glove caliber player, relax, it's all going to work itself out. The truth probably lies somewhere in the middle of that. Do you take anything away over a guy that got to see Barry Larkin play a lot of baseball? What was it about him that either changed? Did you see it from the beginning? Do you think that's a fair comparison? Your overall thoughts on people that want to use that as a point of reference when it comes to Elly De La Cruz?
Well, you may be right, but I don't have any recollection that when Larkin was installed as a shortstop on a regular basis, he made a lot of errors early. I don't remember that. I remember a very smooth, intellectually bright guy who was more than ready to play in the big leagues. In fact, it came down to when that whole group came together, and it was Larkin and Stillwell and O'Neill and Tracy Jones, Cal Daniels. It was a great group of young, talented players, much like this club has today. And they had to make a decision. Is it going to be Stillwell at shortstop, or is it going to be Larkin? And the decision was made, as it turned out to be the correct decision. It was Barry Larkin. And so I don't recollect him making a lot of errors once he got into the lineup on a daily basis. Maybe I'm wrong, but my mind doesn't work like it used to. Is it a fair comparison? I think if you're arguing to the point where he should have learned all these nuances at that position before he got to the big leagues, I would say that's a fair assessment. That's a fair comparison because Barry pretty much played shortstop the whole time and coming up in the Red system out of the University of Michigan. But aside from that, probably an unfair comparison because, Barry came up and Barry pretty much did it all from the get-go. I mean, he could hit, he could steal bases, he could play the position. He did not struggle the way this young man is struggling right now.
Yeah, I think that maybe Barry's bat probably could have overshadowed some of the inefficiencies he had on the defensive side. For those that are wondering, just looking it up, in 1988, at the age of 24 years old, Barry did have 29 errors, and that was good for a 960 fielding percentage.
Yeah.
He was, of all things, he was an all-star, a silver slugger. So again, if Elly De La Cruz, let's face it, if Elly De La Cruz was hitting the cover off the baseball, stealing bases all over the place, I'm sure the fan base probably, I would be willing to guess, would give him a pass on some of these errors. The issue lies is when you have 40% or 35% strikeout rate and you're not doing a very good job at the plate, you're not stealing as many bases as maybe some would suspect, and then all of a sudden you then couple that with the fact that you have fielding errors, it probably snowballs into what we have now. All right, jumping off of Elly De La Cruz. This was a question I'll have for both of you. Do you think that genuinely this Reds team has as much depth as once perceived? Clearly, there's been injuries, there's been things that have happened, but I wonder, you had mentioned, Marty, hey, there's not really anywhere else they can turn right now. How many positions on the diamond do you think that you would actually feel comfortable with at this very moment to be able to say, hey, if something were to go wrong at this position, we actually have a certifiable solution as a backup?
Tom?
I'm sitting here racking my brain. I'm going position by position, Trace. I mean, it's just staggering to me, and it's unfortunate whether it's suspensions or injuries. It's just amazing how the Reds have gone from this depth and this plethora of young, talented players, primarily a lot of infielders, and it surprised everybody when they signed Candelario for that reason. I'm sitting here racking my brain thinking about, I know they like some of their young outfielders, strangely enough, now because all these young infielders are already in the big leagues. Their depth is only going to improve when they get McLean back, and Lord knows when that's going to be. I say it all the time. I don't believe anybody when they tell me, and it's not that I'm accusing them of lying. I just think that you have all these HIPAA rules and all these kinds of things now where you can't talk much about players' injuries. But the guys you're watching right now, in my opinion, I don't know where else, Dad, maybe you fill in the blank. I don't know where else you'd have to. If you were going to watch De La Cruz struggle, let's hope and pray he doesn't. But if he did, I mean, really, what's your option at this point? What is it? I don't know what it is.
Well, I think the option right now, the one that's been brought up, is a newcomer, and that's the Espinal kid.
Yeah.
Why don't you? I saw some people comment on the internet. Put him at shortstop for a few games and let Elly take a big deep breath and then go from there. That's the only option that they have. As far as McLean is concerned, and I hope I'm dead wrong, but nothing has been said about his surgery. Nothing has been said about the surgical procedure he had last week in terms of, to some extent, getting a handle on when he might be back. The only thing that I'm concerned about there, and it's a big concern, is when I hear them say, we hope we have him back in, I'm paraphrasing now, in the not too distant future, or I hope we have him back sometime later in the season. That, to me, is a very ominous comment. It almost would be inclined to think that maybe you're not going to get him back at all. I pray to God that's not the truth, because I think of all of the young players that this club has, I think McLean, and Spencer Steer were the two most consistent among all of them. But again, going back to your question, the depth factor, they had a voluminous amount of depth factor until the injuries and the suspension set in. You have no way of predicting either one of those things when you try to assess a team's talent in terms of being in the postseason. I think if a team can withstand it for the short term, and they'll have T.J. Friedel, I think, will probably be back within the next 2.5 or 3 weeks. And the center field is really not a problem position for them now, excepting for the game that Stuart Fairchild had the other day here. So I don't know. Like I said, I think what works in De La Cruz's favor is the fact that they don't have another option. And I think they're just going to have to live with his shortcomings in the hope that they see improvement to the point where this kid becomes the talent that everyone feels he will be on a big league ball field.
All right, final serious, maybe semi-serious question here before we turn the reins over to Elliot. And you know what, Elliot, maybe he has some serious comments today, because he walked in the office, so he was ready to go, man. I tell you what, Elliot, Elliot's pretty fired up about Elly De La Cruz and the whole situation. But I guess my final question would be, am I overreacting in the sense that maybe this isn't the way to go about managing anymore? But I have a hard time believing, and again, this is just me, this is hearsay, so I got to rely on you guys. The Sparky Andersons of the day, the Lou Pinellas of the day. If you have a guy that makes a play and he makes an error, so be it. But in the very next inning, you have a situation where you make what I would call a pretty lackadaisical, careless pass at a ball to try to flip the ball to second base. And maybe it's a lack of a baseball IQ as much as it is of a not caring. I'm not here to suggest that Elly De La Cruz doesn't care. But at what point do you have a little bit of a tough love and you just pull a guy from a game? Is that gone away? Am I making too much of that? Because last night, if he's not going to pull him in that situation, I don't think he'll ever get pulled. I'm just wondering, am I being overly critical? Just by asking, hey, Espinal, go out there for a couple innings.
Look, the day and age of the Pinellas and the Bobby Coxes and some of the guys like that, long gone. I mean, society, has just changed so much. I would be stunned if there's a manager in the big leagues that would say what Bobby Cox did with Andrew Jones, where he screws up a couple of balls in center field, looks like he didn't go hard after one, and jerks him right off the field in the middle of the game and replaces him like you were suggesting there with Espinal. Now, maybe you'll see it a half inning later. We didn't see it last night. I think there are a couple little things going on with David Bell right now that are going to be interesting to watch how they play out. This situation that you're talking about and the situation that really bothered me, and my dad and I talked about this at his house for dinner 2 nights ago, is the situation where after the game where they screwed up the plays in the field, Encarnacion Strand and Fairchild both ducked the media. Well, the next day when Encarnacion Strand hits a home run to win the game, he didn't duck the media then. Now, look, if these guys don't want to do interviews, it is well within their rights. But that's part of being, as my dad alluded to earlier, there's a part that you have to go along with, whether you like it or not, of being a big leaguer. And when you have bad plays and when you do things that you wish you didn't do out on the field or wish it didn't happen on the field, you got to own up to it and look people straight in the eye and just say, because that's also good for your teammates. It's not what it means to the fans. Your teammates are watching that stuff. And so I think there's a even though we're 5 games in and they're 3-2 and they're playing pretty good, I think there are just a couple of things sort of simmering there now that I'd be interested to know, and I never will know, how David Bell addresses these things.
All right. You have a fun question. Can you lighten the mood here a little bit, Elliot, or not today?
I don't know if I can lighten the mood today. I can try to lighten the mood, but at the end of the day, I have to be somewhat serious because I did come in hot this morning. I was a little upset. I look around this roster, fellas, and I really don't put too much stock into defense in Major League Baseball. I've really never done it. I think it comes to a point where if you're able to do the fundamentals, that really gets you through a majority of the season without too many runs scored against you on defensive mistakes. Saying that, if you're the best of the best, defense makes a big difference because it keeps you in ball games, it shortens innings. If you're the worst of the worst, that's when you really starting to notice it. And the Reds, unfortunately, are the worst of the worst in Major League Baseball when it comes to defense, and I don't understand it. I don't understand how you field a roster and you look around all 9 positions, you look all around the field, and like 7 of them can't play defense at a premium level. And I wonder how that happens. Why is it that guys are getting to the major league level and are unable to produce, I'm going to say, above average defense right now? Why is that?
Well, Elliot, that's a good question, and I think going back to what I said earlier, if you're not getting the proper instruction about how to play your position, and I'm not casting disparaging comments about the Reds organization. I'm just saying what I see, and you just expanded upon it in talking about the fact that right now it's the worst defensive team in this league, maybe in Major League Baseball. I don't know. I think that'll be short term. But I don't know how to answer that question because I guarantee you Nick Kroll will go to war and say these kids are being instructed in the proper way at each level of the farm system, and that this is just a defensive slump that people are going through, and everything will straighten out in time. I understand perfectly what you're saying, and short of what I just stated, I don't know that I have a better answer than that. I just know what I see, and a lot of the things that and I hate to single out Stuart Fairchild. He makes the play in center field, allows a ball to fall, a ball that should have been his ball to play all the way because the center fielder takes charge. And then with a runner at third base, he catches a ball in shallow center, nonchalantly flips it back into the second baseman while the guy tags at third and comes home. Those things should not happen in a high school game.
No.
And so, I'm not singling out. I'm just telling you two glaring mistakes made by Fairchild the other day at home. I don't know how else to answer the question. Hopefully, it's a defensive slump that we've devoted a lot of time to today, and maybe will straighten itself out. I don't know.
I agree. The only thing I'll add on to it is, and again, people seem to not be able to dish out criticism when it comes to some of these young stars. I get it. I completely understand. I love Elly De La Cruz. I love CES. I love Spencer Steer. But at the end of the day, if I'm in second grade and I'm at shortstop and three balls come to me and I'm glove flipping a ball on a routine double play and I don't get any outs whatsoever, I'm going to get criticized. And I don't understand that either. And I don't know if that's just a part of this new age Reds where we see all these young guys and these guys are going to be big stars, so why are you going to say anything negative about them? I don't think it's the fan base isn't out on Elly De La Cruz. The fan base is frustrated that he's not making routine plays. I saw one tweet yesterday. Saying, why can't a 22-year-old kid, why is he getting all this pressure for not being a superstar in 25 minutes? I think there's a big difference between expectations for him. I expect him to win MVP, 40 home runs, 70 stolen bases, and I expect him to make a routine play at short. I think those are two very big different expectations, and I think most people in this city, the rational ones at least, are on this side of the fence where they're like, all right, I don't expect him to win MVP. I just expect him to make a routine play. So where do you guys think? Where do you guys stand on the expectation of some of these young players? Because I think Elly is, to be fair to him, he's taking a blunt of this criticism. He's taking all of it, and that's what happens when you bring the hype. When you're the number one prospect and you bring all this excitement, you do get all the eyeballs on you. So do you think it's fair? Do you think the criticism was warranted to Elly De La Cruz?
What's warranted for any player who's in this is the big leagues. This is the big leagues. These are the best players in the world. Now, expecting somebody to steal 80 bases, expecting somebody to hit 40 home runs, look, that's just fans being fans, okay? And they are what they are, and it's great, and you got to have them, and you love them. But they can go up and down, as we've seen even just in the last 24 hours, right? Everybody wants to kill De La Cruz today after a bad game last night. But it is not beyond criticism when a guy is striking out 50% of the time, and all we read about in spring training, a new approach and putting the bat on the ball and all this sort of stuff, and a routine defensive play. It is not unreasonable, and it is not wrong to criticize someone for not making the routine play. Fly ball, ground ball, whatever. Throw strikes if you're a pitcher. Get the ball over the plate.
All right, parting thought, Marty, do you think that this criticism is relatively fair?
I agree with everything that Tom just said. Everybody seems here's another thing. We have a group of media people that cover this club and have been forever that's as good and as cooperative with mistakes. They don't want to write about it. They don't want to ask questions about it. They don't want to ask David Bell while Stuart Fairchild and Christian Encarnacion Strand were not in the clubhouse when they came down to talk to him about their game if they wanted to talk to him. And David Bell is a very private manager. If he had a conversation with them, he's not going to announce that publicly. Dusty was the same way, although Dusty would be asked a question, and I don't think David was ever asked why weren't they in the clubhouse after the game. Dusty would say, we've talked to these young men, and that won't happen again, and that'll be the end of it. I think, like Tom said, the criticism is valid if you're not making the routine plays. I think that's cut and dried. And I'm not interested in your showmanship on a scale of 1 to 10 and how you fan marvels at a play that whoever we're talking about makes it look difficult or is a spectacular delivery to first base when it could have been done with a higher degree of efficiency if he just taken his time, planted his feet, and made the throw. I think that a lot of the hype that surrounds Elly De La Cruz has been projected by the media, by the ball club, And so if you're going to pin a blame on somebody for expecting too much out of the kid that we've talked about today, then I think a lot of people have to suffer the blame for that. The ball club, the media, himself making spectacular plays, some warranted, some unwarranted. It's a combination of things that you're not going to see go away. But as Tom said, you got to make the routine play in the major leagues.
All right, gentlemen. Fun discussion. Hopefully next week there's something maybe a little more positive to discuss. But I think Trace.
They're 3-2.
That's right.
I mean, everybody talked about a good start, and with all the injuries and everything, we're not looking at 3-22 from 2 years ago now. We're not looking at 7-19 here. They're 3-2 the last time. So everybody just take a deep breath.
That's right. Relax.
I agree with that.
Who knew the Brenna-Men were going to come in here and tell us to relax?
Right, baby.
That's one hell of a start to a Wednesday here on
That's right.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate you coming on as always. We'll see you next week. Enjoy your
pal.
Try to stay warm, guys. It's not this weather's not the best around here.
Good.
Thanks, Trace.
See ya. Thank you, guys. Well, there you have it. Like I said before, how in the world we're supposed to keep these things to the certain segments that we're going to, it's just not going to happen. We'll figure it out on the back end. That's why we have, what do we have, like 30 minutes to edit here?
Yeah.
So that's that. So we're going to take a quick break. And by break, you know how this goes on YouTube. We'll be with you. But on 1410 Wing AM, we'll be back in just a bit to talk more about Elly De La Cruz. All right, welcome back in. 1410 Wing AM. Chatterbox Sports on YouTube every day from 10 A to 12 P. But on Wing, it's 1 P to 3 P. All right, gentlemen. There was obviously a plethora of things that were just discussed that we'll get into. Let's just start by saying this. Elly De La Cruz didn't ask, quite frankly, for as much attention that he received. But I also don't think that we can all agree that we're in a spot now where he didn't shy away from it. And that's okay. If you want to be the flashy player, if you want to wear the chains, and you want to be a star, that's fine. No one cares about that, for all lack of a better term. We've had that already in this city. In fact, I would argue one of the most beloved players in this city was one that was all about brash. He was all about trash talk, and that was Ocho Cinco. And by Ocho Cinco, he changed his name to that. He was Chad Johnson. So this city loves that. The issue just comes from, if you're not going to make plays and you're a professional player, you're going to get criticized. And that's okay too. We all are aware, at least I am, that if they are 3-2. We're 5 games in to a 162-game season. No one, I don't think, in their right mind is hitting the panic button. For those that are saying that he needs to go back to AAA, I don't know. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say maybe they're just overreacting a little bit on social media. If they genuinely believe that, then we're wildly far apart than what we believe that Elly De La Cruz is capable of. You're on one side of the aisle here or you're not. I think the vast majority, I'm hoping the vast majority of the fan base is somewhere in the middle. You have one side of the aisle that's going to continue to, they're going to bring up sabermetrics from time to time. They're going to say outs above average. Elly De La Cruz is the third best player on the team with outs above average. According to StatCast, only Elly De La Cruz can make this play. Well, at some point, too, the opposite side needs to be true. You have to make routine plays. I, unfortunately, last night was up till 2:30 a.m. because I got into a rabbit hole of basically what is StatCast and what is basically the metric that these folks are using with outs above average, and how does it actually become determined of what's an out above average and what's not. And they do their best to their ability, of course, to try to come up with some semblance of a I guess metric that is, this guy would have caught this ball, but this guy wouldn't have caught this ball. But my main question, and again, I am going to probably spend way too much time on this over the next probably week and a half, 2 weeks, about what actually goes into this stuff that people use to defend Elly De La Cruz when it comes to his overall defensive efficiency at shortstop. Because when I watch it, unfortunately, I don't see the same things that everyone claims about his defensive abilities. I watch Matt McClain play shortstop, and you know what? It's not as flashy. It doesn't look as good. He has to set his feet. He has to essentially get everything that he has into his body to make the same throw that Elly De La Cruz can do on his back foot. But you know what I did see with Matt McClain? I didn't see any of the plays from last night that Elly made throughout the entirety of last season, and maybe it was just one bad game. But I also want everybody to know when they point to the sabermetrics and they point to how efficient and effective that Elly is in the field, the large majority, he's 4 outs above replacement right now, which is obviously above league average as a fielder. 3 of the 4 outs, by the way, are from third base, though. So if you can't continue to say this guy's a great defender and he's going to be a great shortstop, but not at least admit that there's been disappointment. And this is the major leagues. That's what my tweet was about last night. This is the top of the top. These games count. Yeah, you can convince me he's 22 years old. You can tell me, for lack of a better term, that he's going to figure it out. He's going to get better. All of those things could be true, yes. But at some point, the games are the games. I'm watching what I'm watching now. This isn't a development league. And I know you're going to argue, in the one side of the aisle that's going to defend Elly tooth and nail is going to say, look back at Barry. Look at back some of the great shortstops. They struggled at the beginning of their careers too. And you know what? That may be true. But I would just suggest that, are we just going to assume that it's going to get better? Are we just going to make up the fact that maybe, just maybe, he is not as great of a shortstop defensively as one would have suggested to me when we first started watching? And no, I'm never going to be convinced that every out's the same. Some outs are more impactful than others. I seen last night people saying, hey, that was a great swing by Elly, a good double. They all count the same. No, they don't. If the score's 15-2 and you walk up to the plate, that is not as important of a bat if you come up with the bases loaded in a tie game. Sure, you can say that it's in the course of 162 games, it'll all average out. And you know what? You know, some guys some people don't believe in a clutch gene. Some people just believe that you just randomly, sometimes in pressure situations you perform and sometimes you don't. Well, not to jump all over the place here, but then explain to me how an 84% free throw shooter against Virginia, by the way, missed 2 free throws that gave NC State a chance to hit the half-court shot that they hit, and then all of a sudden NC State turns around and they made it to the Final Four. Was it because maybe that was a pressure situation? Was it maybe because the 84% free throw shooter just isn't 84% because it's the game's on the line? That's sports. That's why we watch it. It's not some mathematical equation done and there are a bunch of robots out there. So it will be interesting to see how well Elly De La Cruz bounces back from this. Because if anything, David Bell has shown that he's 100% supportive of him. And by the way, the first error that Elly made, understandable. It happens from time to time, okay? But the reason for the outrage is because of the situation. You have to know that there's a guy on third base. You have to know it's a tight game. You can't be lackadaisical. It's inexcusable to be lackadaisical. That's where the outrage comes from. If it was a 9-1 game and Elly makes that same play, nobody even raises an eyebrow to it. Because guess what? Situations are different in life. Situations matter. If you walked into your first big boy interview at your job, guess what? That moment in your life means a little bit more than some random meeting up of somebody you've never met before. My point is that this is the big leagues. Yes, we're allowed to be critical of major league players. And could CES have caught the ball? Yes, he could have caught the ball. And if CES would have caught the ball, then maybe there wouldn't have been as much outrage. But you know what, where this started from? It started from a piss-poor throw. A lackadaisical throw. And oh, by the way, for those that are saying that CES 100% should have caught the ball, great point by Sean when he walked in today. Elly threw the ball from about 80 feet away. It was 3 or 4 feet offline. It's not like he had time to adjust from the ball being deep in the hole. I understand. Hopefully we can all fall in the middle. That's my take. Do I think it's the end of the world? Of course I don't. But I also don't believe that we can sit here and keep suggesting for a single second that Elly De La Cruz 100%, just give him a little time. He's going to figure it out. Just give him a little time. He's going to be one of the best players. And you know what else I will say? Is I do think that there is some merit to the idea that he's 22 years old. But when does that run its course? When Carlos Correa is playing in the World Series at age 21, if he makes an error, are they just going to say, oh, no big deal, Carlos Correa, no big deal, he's only 21? Where's Carlos Correa now? He's not even playing for that team anymore. That's the next point I want to make really quickly, is that how long do these guys get? We get them for how many years? 6? That's the service time that we're given? So when Elly De La Cruz is, 28 years old, he's either getting extended or he's not on the Reds anymore. So I'm all for giving guys time. But I'm also for being fair and equitable. And I think it's fair to justly be upset at Elly De La Cruz last night. Now, of course, you can take the folks that are on the other side of the aisle that are on the complete deep end that say you should go to AAA. You can point at those people and say, well, look at those. You want to be like that? No. But I know one thing, and I know this for an absolute fact. I need to look into outs above average. I need to look into essentially what exactly it is that we all hang our hat on to tell me how good somebody is defensively. Because the more and more I've researched, it basically comes down to range. It comes down to what plays can you make that other guys can't make. And if you can make more plays than the other guys can't make, then you're obviously going to become, in that metric, viewed better. But what do you value more? Do you value the fact that somebody can make 1 out of 100 plays, that it's so much better than somebody else, or do you just want them to make the plays that everybody else can make too? We shall find out. I know one thing. If it was Jonathan India last night that had that same type of game, and you could say, well, look at the track record, and that's why Jonathan India would have been, as Elliott said, shipped to Siberia.
Everybody would have.
So
every single player. I'm gonna give some thoughts here. I know maybe we're out of time. I'm kind of out on the time thing. Last night, and again, some of my bits were trolling. I rolled into it a little bit last night because I thought it was funny. Eventually, it just becomes funny how toxic Reds Twitter is. You get on the app, and it's legitimately a war. It's a war between the Nick Kirbys and the positive side, and I won't name the negative side because they hate us. So it's a war between those two, and you're trying to navigate through it. Like, okay, so let's have some rational thinking here, professional thinking, as Derby put it in the chat, because I'm not a professional thinker. I was looking at it both sides. If any player makes the errors, 3 errors, I think 1 got redacted, but 3 errors, 2 errors. If anybody does that, they get criticized. If Elly does it, no criticism whatsoever. There are the people on X and on Facebook and everybody else calling into Lance's show on 700 saying Elly needs to go down to AAA. Elly needs to go down to AA. This is ridiculous. Wrong. Elly De La Cruz is a Major League Baseball player. He is. He's not a minor league player. Sending him to AAA, in my opinion, doesn't solve anything. Because what's going to happen is you're going to send him there. He's going to hit 330. He's going to steal 400 bags. And you'll be like, oh, that guy's awesome. Let's bring him back up. And then nothing's really solved. So I agree with everybody there. Keep him here. Keep him at short. Let him get the reps. Saying that, I also added, when I just mentioned that previous statement, he's a Major League Baseball player. When you're a Major League Baseball player, you have to be responsible for making Major League plays. I'm not asking, these aren't superstar plays. These are routine 10-mile-per-hour ground outs that any second baseman this side of the Mississippi can make. These are routine baseball plays. And yes, weather might have played a factor. So I'll give Elly a pass on that even. We'll give Elly a pass on the rain. We'll give Elly a pass on the age. But eventually you have to make a play. You have to. And I know he's a kid. And I'm about as tired of that excuse as any, because eventually you're not a kid, you're a professional. And that's what he is right now. He's a professional athlete. If any rookie in the NFL makes a mistake, they're going to get killed. They're going to get made fun of. It's a little different in baseball. I get it. I understand how the farm system works. But eventually, when you make a major league roster, you have to be held accountable. I'm not saying Elly should be shipped anywhere. I buy the Elly hype. Elly's a great baseball player. And I think that's what it comes down to is everybody thinks and they hope that Elly's going to be this Ronald Acuna Jr. He's going to be Shohei. He's going to be the greatest player in the league. That's what our hope, that's what our expectations are. Are those expectations fair? No, they're not. And they're impossible to live up to. No player, I'd argue, in the past several seasons have had this high of expectations. The world is on Elly's shoulders. The world, the entire planet is on his shoulders. And he's trying to navigate through that. He's on a 10-game hitting streak. He is. He's on a 10-game hitting streak. Nobody's going to mention it. He's on a 10-game hitting streak. But at the end of the day, if Reds fans are sitting at home and it's a routine ground ball to end an inning, you expect him to make the throw. That's what's going on here. Nobody's freaking out. I make the joke on Twitter that I use over-exaggeration all the time. I say the season's over. I say it's back on. It's a shtick. It's a joke. Now, I am a more negative Reds fan, as most people know. But the season isn't over. We're 5 games in.
We're 3-2.
We're 3-2, and it's fine. Elly De La Cruz is going to be fine. But right now, he's going to have to focus, hunker down on defense. He is.
All I'm going to ask, though, this is where, and again, you already said it. I'm not trying to be negative. All I'm saying is let's just be fair.
Yeah.
Let's be fair. If someone else made the same plays that Elly made last night, and there would be a certain community within Reds fandom that would be all over him. That would say that he needs to be shipped. Get him out of here. If Espinal did that last night, he'd never play. Not a single Reds fan would want him to play shortstop again for the rest of the season. If Kevin Newman did that last year, you wouldn't want him back ever again. I just want to be fair. We say Elly's going to be great. Elly's going to be great. I hope you're right, but I'm tired of saying it. I'm not saying it ever again. I hope he's great, but I'm not going to say he's going to be great. There's a lot of players that come and go that you thought were going to be pretty good players that they just don't end up being great players. So you can say whatever you want about the pressure. The pressure comes from the folks that have suggested that he was going to be the best player on the Reds roster from the get-go. So what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to just sit here and suggest that automatically, no matter what, Elly De La Cruz, he's supposed to be the best player the Reds have, but then when he doesn't, he's not, then we claim youth? When he's stealing all the bags last year and he looks like he's one of the best players, maybe not just on the Reds, but in Major League Baseball, we're allowed to cheer him on and act like he is the best, but then when things go sour, we can't criticize. I'm just trying to figure out the rules for some guys and not the rules for others. Elly De La Cruz, I'm not out on him. Of course I'm not out on him. Anybody that is out on him is not in their right mind. But I think it's wild to sit here and suggest that no matter what, automatically it's going to work itself out. I'm going to continue to watch. We'll see if he develops. But the only way, in my opinion, that you're going to become from what your potential is basically work. And we'll find out if Elly has the ability to get to where his ceiling is of what everybody talks about. You know, I had the privilege, we'll call it that, of being around a lot of baseball people for a long time. I was a part of a recruiting service. We've seen kids, prospects, time and time and time again. And there was two schools of thought. We're going to take all these kids that are raw, have huge potential, come in, they throw 94 miles an hour. They don't know where it's going, but we'll take them because they could throw 94 miles an hour. And then you had some folks that would like the guy that threw 88 to 92. And they knew where the ball was going. They were never going to throw 95, 96. There's two schools of thought. I get that. And we're battling both right now. Because Elly, without question, has an incredibly high ceiling. But a high ceiling only means one thing. It's untapped potential. It's untapped potential. It doesn't guarantee you to ever tap into it. I just ask for fairness. That's all. Elly De La Cruz, you can say whatever you want. He's not been that great defensively at shortstop. Will it change? We'll find out together. But this is the major leagues. And at some point, that has to change. And I guess my question would be, how long does he get? That's my main question. How long does he actually get? Is it a full year? Does he get till he's 25?
All right, Trace.
How long? All right. Well, we lost that a long time ago when we could have gone to break, just so we know, with my man over here, and he went on a 10-minute rant. So, yes, we can go to break. 14:10 Wing AM. We'll be right back. I don't understand the point of that, Casey, because we're just well off on our shoes today. If we wanted to be serious about it, sure, we could have gone to break when you were given the break sign right in front of Elliot's face, and he's like, I don't care about that. We're not doing that today.
I do want to rant.
And then he went on a 10-minute rant that he could have done after the break, but that's fine. We won't do it today. We'll do it live tomorrow in the flesh.
That'll be good.
We'll see how that ultimately goes.
That'll be exciting.
And yeah, people are going to get mad at me, Trey, stop talking. I'm just saying, these are the clear fundamentals of why you have two sides of the aisle and why people are getting at each other's neck on social media and what Reds fandom ultimately is upset about. Where do you fall on that? Maybe you're going to play, that's fine. Play the card of, it's 1 of 162, I don't care. That's fine too. I think that's got some merit to it. We'll find out how this ultimately ends up going. And you know what? If he proves himself that he can play shortstop, that's great. That's fantastic. But I also don't buy into the idea that you can automatically guarantee me, just based off what you've seen so far, that Elly De La Cruz is an everyday shortstop in the big leagues. Casey, you have something to add?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to I agree with you 100% about what the expectations for Elly should be and the criticism he should receive. I think they should all be equal. Every single player should be equal. And not to mention the stuff that doesn't even show up on the stat sheets. The stuff where he could have made the play that he didn't, that you would expect your star player to make. Like I'm thinking of the pop fly that we want to kill Stuart Fairchild for, but Elly was 6 inches away from grabbing that ball. There's plays where he's getting picked off trying to make an attempt at a stolen base. Those things matter too, especially when they happen. Not all things are created equal, like you said before. Yesterday, I tweeted out that it feels like he makes a mistake a game, and then I retweeted it saying, like, maybe 2 or 3. That was me being kind of facetious as well. But we got to make a decision whether or not he should be protected or should he be criticized like the star that we think he is. Because clearly he's either needs protection, that he's young, that he's just trying to figure it out. Well, then he's not a star. I've been told time and time again by many Reds fans that he is the Joe Burrow of the Reds. He's the savior of the Reds. This guy is going to be, could be. Well, he's not yet. Can we stop saying that? That he's just a developing prospect instead? Like, that would solve a lot of issues then.
I totally agree. In fact, I would venture to say that Major League Baseball as a whole, they're going to try to market marketable players. Elly De La Cruz is without question incredibly marketable. Flashy, fun, entertaining, provides highlight reels. Major League Baseball as a whole is going to want to highlight Elly De La Cruz. You know who they're not going to want to highlight? Spencer Steer. Why? Because he just goes and does the fundamentals. He's there every day, makes the plays. But when you watch this club on a day-in, day-out basis from last year, ask yourself, if you plucked a couple guys off the roster, who would be the most impactful player that you would have possibly lost? Maybe you could argue it was Elly. I would say you would have been wrong. I think Matt McClain, without question last year, was the straw that stirred the drink that allowed the Reds to get into position to be able to start to play consistent baseball last year. And yes, it wasn't just one guy. Of course, it's a team sport. I get it. But that's the part where I have a little bit of sympathy for Elly, because he came up into the league. He was pushed to stardom, maybe before, quite frankly, he was genuinely a star. And he started off as hot as you could get, which maybe in hindsight wasn't the best thing for him. But he's here now, and it's here to stay. Sir Boy with a super chat says, I'm just going to say it. Elly should play at third because he's better there. That's what last night proved to me. That's a good sentiment. I don't disagree with it. I just think that listen, using 1 day of reference is hard to do in a course of 162 games. Let's be fair. If you took any player in Major League Baseball throughout the history of their careers and you said, hey, go watch them play on their worst day of their career, we would all think that every single player, if we knew nothing about them, was a terrible baseball player. that goes for the greats of all time. So I'm not going to suggest that Elly, because of one day, right, you give up on him, which if some are suggesting. But you can at least admit, to some extent, there's some merit here. There's some merit here to the side that's screaming. Because you can't strike out 35, 40% of the time. And then do the glove flip after you made an error. You can't do it.
The other thing, too, and Derby, he just brought this up, and I know we've been crushing Elly, but the Reds weren't winning that game regardless of Elly making those errors.
Are we sure about that?
Bryce Harper hit 3 home runs.
Yeah, and that's fine. He hit 3 home runs.
2 of them were solo shots.
But I guess but 2 of them were solo shots, and the other one that he hit, the other one he hit, correct me if I'm wrong, the other one he hit, was that not after the debacle?
Correct.
Yes.
So I guess my question is,
he hit the grand slam.
I just don't buy that. Is it likely that they would have lost? Yes.
Yeah,
Is it likely they would have lost? Yes, maybe so. But they also did get a couple guys on towards the end of the game, and I'm not going to suggest for a single second that Elly lost them the game.
They could have
act
rallied.
like they couldn't have won regardless. That's not a big deal. That's
Elly
blasphemy.
took the Reds out of the game. He did not lose the game for the Reds. He took the Reds out of the game.
Correct. That's what I was trying to say.
I feel like if they were to put this in an NFL perspective, because I know our audience loves the NFL so much, it's like the Bengals were down, or whoever team you want to use was down by 10 with about 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and they got in the red zone, and a guy fumbled the football. Yeah. It's okay. Would they have won that game? I don't know. Probably not. Usually you don't win when there's only 10 minutes left and you're down by 2 scores. But I do know what it did do. It took him out of it. The game was over.
Right.
So
Correct.
Here's the biggest issue I have with all of it, and I'm done talking about Elly, is that he had the audacity to try to make that backhanded glove flip after he just botched the ball the inning before. You either, one, don't have a high baseball IQ because you didn't realize that the runner was already safe at second base, or you've grown up into some kind of culture, and or your baseball experiences throughout your life have allowed you to try to make those types of plays over and over and over again that it just came second nature to him. I don't know. I do know this, that if there was some systematic way of playing, at some point, Elly doesn't try to make a backhanded flip on a ball over the middle after he just made that error.
So this is a predicament. There's breaking news. Usually we would probably usually go to break after that, and then come back to this.
What's the breaking news?
The breaking news is Stephon Diggs was traded to the Texans.
It's going to be a super team. They got a super team in Houston.
That's huge. They have C.J. Stroud, Joe Mixon, Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and Dalton Schultz as their offense. That is a dangerous offense, to say the least.
NFL. How about some NFL talk on a Wednesday?
It says that the Texans are trading draft pick compensation. Hasn't been announced what that is just yet. I'm assuming that there's going to be some first-round picks thrown in there. I'm just assuming that. That's interesting. I don't know what the Bills, they're really tearing it down, to be honest with you. They got rid of their whole secondary. They're getting rid of their best offensive player besides Josh Allen.
Seems like the window has closed. Or at least it's closing. Is that fair to say for the Buffalo Bills?
Closing, or they're trying to extend it. You know, I don't know what sort of compensation they're getting. I'm assuming it's going to be a first rounder, and if they just pick like 2 receivers back to back or something, they can really like just catapult their offense into the next era.
Yeah.
But
that's fair.
Interesting, to say the least.
Chase Claypool, real quick, another breaking news I saw this morning. Chase Claypool, he's going to the CFL. Didn't work in the NFL, he's going to the CFL. Tough scenes.
Interesting. Didn't know that was going to be on the agenda today. Is Chase Claypool going to the CFL?
Sure.
What do we make of the Stephon Diggs things? I guess the real cool question, if we got real honest answers, would be: was there actually rift between Diggs and Allen all along? Because we have been told, and you always get told, that no, there's no problem. Those are just 2 competitors all the time. But maybe they're obviously behind the scenes it wasn't so lovely after all. And Josh Allen at some point went to the front office and said, "Listen, if you're in a position where you have the ability to we can move on here, I'm open to that. I would welcome it. If he's here, I'll make do. But if you can find something that you find some value in, maybe that makes sense. Let's go for it." Is that overreacting? Is that putting? Is it far-fetched to think that actually could have happened?
I think that was very much a thing. I think that was very much part of the offense last year. Diggs itself, it felt like really wasn't even a part of that offense towards the end of the season. It was Shakir who kind of took it over.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they had a whole different philosophy. That after that Bengals game, they had a completely different offense. They ran the ball quite a bit. Like you said, Diggs was basically gone, disappeared. I would not be shocked. I mean, there's so many. When there's rumors, when there's smoke, there's usually some fire somewhere.
That's right.
And there were so many. I mean, it felt like every offseason there was some sort of drama between the two of them or between the team and Diggs. I'm assuming that there is something true to it.
They only got a second rounder for him.
Wow, a second round for it. I mean, they could still probably get a high-end receiver because of how deep it is this year, but, man.
Interesting. Let's do this. Let's take a Wing AM break. Then we'll do our ads here, and when we come back, we'll do some headlines, and we'll try to change up the vibes of this show.
We'll change the vibes.
Yep.
We'll be back better than ever. Right after this, it's 1410 Wing AM. Your home for the best sports talk in Dayton, Ohio.
Oh.
Elliot, take it away, merman.
Well, Elliot is going to now throw it to Casey because it's time for our personal ads that the radio station isn't going to hear. So, Casey, fire away.
All right. The Bengals, Reds, Bearcats, just the Cincinnati sports report.
We lost on that one.
All brought to you by Encore Technologies. Encore Technologies provides IT solutions for a data center world with a suite of services from mobile computing to desktop to data center, supporting both centralized and work-from-home computing modules to improve efficiency and
productivity.
That is correct, productivity. The path to innovation begins here. Visit encore.tech. Let me tell you about this lovely bottle of water right here.
What is that bottle?
You want to know what this bottle is?
Yes.
Pawnee water. Made right here in Hamilton, Ohio. Uses natural limestone filtration, unlike the artificial processing that other brands use. The result is a healthy alkaline water, and some say the best tasting water in the world, and I can attest to that. Visit Pawnee Water at PAHHNI water.com. See where you can buy this great tasting water. And then let me tell you about our lovely sponsor, our ticketing sponsor, the Game Time app. I haven't quite used it just yet. I'm looking forward to using it and using code OTB to get $20 off my first purchase and yours if you do so. You download Game Time app, use code OTB for your first purchase. Terms do apply. And you can see exactly where you're going to sit. It's 2 clicks, and you get to purchase those tickets. And all the pricing's up front, so you're not getting scammed or anything like that at the end of the checkout. So.
Next home series is against the Mets. If you want to do them with buy some Reds tickets, Mets on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So come on out to GABP, get the Game Time app. OTB is your code, $20 off.
That's right.
Your first purchase. And real quick, everybody who's in here, please like the stream. If you like the stream, it'll cement Elly's Hall of Fame legacy.
That's right.
That'll be your incentive to like that stream.
That's
because he's just a little baby boy.
Yeah,
just a little kid.
If you feel inclined to do so, we also have memberships. That also helps us out, supports us out a lot. And I think maybe we'll talk about doing some like watch along live streams as well for the members. That would be really fun.
All right, welcome back in to 1410 Wing AM, your home for the best sports talk in the Miami Valley. I am Trace Fowler. This is Off the Bench. Guys, you just mentioned maybe trying to sneak a game in or two, not to give free ads here, but the Reds, I don't know if you've seen, but they have some legit bobbleheads.
Really?
Coming up. Yes, there's some legit bobbleheads.
I
believe it's Fraley and McLean. It's the first bobbleheads that are in the new City Connect uniforms.
Yes.
Those are pretty legit. I don't know. Are you guys big bobblehead folks? Obviously, I know the desk proves that, but I don't know if that's more of like an office thing.
I love bobbleheads.
Yeah.
I told a story a long time ago. If you want me to retell it, of when my love of bobbleheads ended, do you want me to tell it?
Well, I mean, how long is it?
It's a decent story. I mean, it's.
Well, wait, give me a
Can
minute.
you give a short version?
Yeah, we'll give a shortened version. When I was a freshman in high school, I was cut from the elder soccer team.
Never seen that coming.
I loved soccer. It was my favorite sport. That coach cut me because I was too short to play goalie.
Is that what he called you?
He said
too
you.
short?
He said you had the best tryout.
Gotcha.
Unfortunately, you're just not tall enough to play the
What a
position.
nice guy.
That's what he said. So from then, I vowed to hate soccer and everybody else who watches it
Too
and
short.
supports it. And then when I got home from getting cut, I was so angry. I had about a collection of roughly 45 bobbleheads.
Didn't have anything to do with athleticism.
And it had nothing to do with athleticism. I had the best tryout by far, and I was told that. So I got home and I get to my bobbleheads, and I ripped the head off of every one of my bobbleheads, and I threw them out the window because I was angry.
Out of anger.
So that was the bobblehead story. So now I'm not a bobbleheads guy.
Gotcha. So you were a bobbleheads guy. Now you're not a bobbleheads guy.
Correct.
Gotcha. All because of that soccer coach that was just couldn't see talent.
Pretty sure there's like a psychiatric evaluation of kids that rip off the heads of their dolls. That tends to lead into murders, but we won't get into that. Yeah, that's a really tough story. I kind of like bobbleheads. I'll probably go and try to get the McLean one.
Okay.
I really love Matt. That's my favorite Reds player on this team currently. It's a shame that he got hurt, but I really want that bobblehead, especially if it's in the City Connect jersey. The other thing, too, is my wife, she loves the Zoo Night.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you can see it over there, but we've got, I can't remember which elephant it is, but yeah, we will get whatever zoo bobblehead that comes around.
How about that?
We like to get those. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Headlines? Want to do some headlines?
Let's do some headlines because the chat's down bad.
Yeah. So let's do it. I'll start with the Reds because I wrote my Reds recap. We never really talked about the finality of it. The Reds lose 9-4 to the Phillies. Graham Ashcraft. I saw some Graham Ashcraft in the chat, which is wild because he couldn't have pitched any better.
Yeah, great.
6 innings, 2 earned runs. He struck out 5. His 2 mistakes, as again mentioned in the chat, 2 solo shots.
Yeah.
If you're gonna do it, if you're gonna give up home runs, make them solo shots.
Especially
Right.
Bryce
That is
Harper.
that is a quality start for Graham Ashcraft. He might have gone 7 had somebody not made any errors. Bryce Harper, again, he added a 3rd home run later in the game, grand slam style. It was a grand slam because of an error. Elly De La Cruz, he is on a 10-game hitting streak. That's all I'll add there. 10-game hitting streak for Elly De La Cruz. Great player. That's my guy. Spencer Steer, again, a dominant performance at the plate. 3 for 4. This guy, without question, is our rock.
Will
He's our
Benson
anchor.
too made an unbelievable
Will Benson
play in
was
center
great, too.
field, and you know what? Guess what? That got basically pissed right away, right there towards the end of the inning. And I'm done talking.
What happened at the end of the inning?
I'm not going to talk about what happened at the end of the inning. I'm just saying though, Will Benson is starting to showcase perhaps the potential that we all hoped he had, and again, maybe that's a remembering opportunity for all of us about what could be the case for Elly. But my point about Will Benson is, so far, he looks like the best player on this team. And I think Spencer Steer's right behind him neck and neck. Don't get me wrong.
Very close.
But those two guys have been rock solid.
Nick Kirby-
and we are only 5 games in, by the way.
Nick Kirby told me he didn't want any baseball hit in Spencer Steer's direction. That's his takeaway from Spencer Steer. Mookie, he hit his MLB leading 5th home run of the season last night. Dodgers beat the Giants 5-4. Red Sox, they came back to beat the lowly Athletics in extras. Guardians take care of the Mariners 5-2, while the Padres fall to the St. Louis Cardinals 5-2. I'll get into the NL Central standings in a second. Diamondbacks, they shut out the Yankees 7-0. Blue Jays and White Sox both win yesterday. White Sox, it was their first game of the season in which they won. Cubs, they destroyed the lowly Rockies 12-2. I saw a Cody Bellinger moonshot. I mean, the Rockies are sad. I'm going to say the A's are a joke. The Rockies are just sad. Just a sad, sad franchise. The Rays beat the Rangers 5-2. Angels, they got a win over the Marlins 3-1. I'll have to find out if Mike Trout hit another home run in that one. By the way, I believe the count for Anthony Rendon, his last hit in the major leagues, I think it's 10 years now. Royals, they beat the Orioles 4-1. Brewers beat the Twins 3-2. Pirates are 5-0. They lead the division, the NL Central. The Brewers are in second. They are 4-0. The Cubs and the Reds are tied 3-2, and the St. Louis Cardinals are a half game back at 3-3. How about this start for the NL Central? Very good start.
Yeah, you'd like to think that we play in a we play in a division that's not very good, but I'm starting to believe that might not totally be the case. And I know that people are sitting here and they're going to be screaming to the moon and back. If you are a part of the crowd that believes that it's only been 5 of 162, this is not the show for you.
Correct.
Because certainly when you do sports talk every single day, you talk about sports that are obviously relevant at that very specific time. Right now, the Central looks like a wagon. Whether it is a wagon or not, I don't know. But I don't know if it's as bad. I don't know if it's as bad as everyone suggested.
I think
Pirates last year were pretty good until they had some injuries, Elliot. Just saying. And they were pretty good towards the end of the year. I don't know how bad the Pirates are. I'm not suggesting for a single second that maybe they're going to be World Series champs, but you could convince me that the Pirates are more likely to win the division than finish 4th or 5th in the division.
Whoa. All right.
Well, I don't know.
That's Overreaction Wednesday.
Headlines.
Seton Hall, they crushed Georgia in the NIT 84-67 in the first semifinal. And in the second semifinal, Indiana State dropped 100 points yet again. They beat Utah 100-90. NBA news, the Nuggets, they beat the Spurs 110-105. And I'm only mentioning this because Jokic dropped 42 points, added 16 rebounds. Victor Wembanyama, he scored 23 points with 15 rebounds. He added 8 assists and 9 blocks. Almost the quadruple-double for Victor Wembanyama. And I wanted to add this quick little video, Casey, of Gary Cohen and the Mets. The Mets have not won a game yet this season. I believe yesterday's was rained out. And this was one of the, I guess, little outros to one of their segments yesterday. Just trying to get through a weather delay. I'm sure every TV broadcaster's had to deal or do some of this nonsense. But this is Gary Cohen going to break as the Mets continue their winless season.
Well, we'll be here when the game starts, and until then, you guys just get the snacks that you can and try and keep nourished.
Oh, that's just a guy that's given up. I love to see it. And I'll say this: if you want to get positive about being a Reds fan, let's be positive. There are franchises right now in Major League Baseball that are in significantly worse places than we are. The Mets being one of them. Gary Cohen looked like he wanted to just die right there, dealing with that nonsense. We have the Tigers, who I don't think are very good. You have the Athletics, who don't have a home, don't have fans, are shipping players that are hitting 500 down to minor leagues. You go around the league. I'm just saying, everybody calm down. Let's have some fun. The Reds are going to be great. You want to hear a positive? Graham Ashcraft looked damn good yesterday. Outside of 2. By the way, Bryce Harper hadn't had a hit all season. Nobody was more due in the history of sports than Bryce Harper. So you knew he was going to let it all out. He let it all out, unfortunately, against us last night. But there's a chance to win the series today. The game was pushed back from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock due to inclement weather. So I'm sure Trace and Nick will have a Chatterbox Reds, I believe, after that. Or maybe not.
Yep, that's the plan.
That is the plan. So around 7p or 6p, you'll see Chatterbox Reds with Nick and Trace. It'll be a positive Red show because the Reds are going to win this. They're going to win the series. They're going to beat the Phillies in Philadelphia. And what do we got here? Super chat?
You can finish your thought.
Well, it was. Oh, I got.
You got to finish your thought.
Well, I got distracted.
I mean, you can't get distracted. You just finish your thought, and then you can read the super chat.
The Reds are going to win this series.
There you go.
The Reds are going to win this series. They're going to beat the Philadelphia Phillies. But now we have a super chat I'm going to read. This is from Sam Beckman to Elliot for the Bama money line. Roll Tide all the way from Alabama. Don't give a piss about nothing but the Tide. Alabama winning would be detrimental to my health.
The Crimson Tide of
Alabama winning on Saturday would destroy me. Absolutely eviscerate me. That would make me very sad. So let's not have that happen. I disagree with that super chat.
I wonder how many folks that are in Alabama that I guess follow sports even in the slightest. I wonder how excited they are for the Final Four, because I think that would be like a new little flavor, right? You kind of like walk in to the local market and you go and you find your favorite kind of ice cream brand, and then all of a sudden you see the marketing and it's just like bam, it says big new next to it, and you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. Now whether or not you actually care to get it again, I don't know, but it certainly seems like Alabama fans would be excited that they are in the Final Four, because usually all they care about is football down there, if we're being completely honest.
That's right.
The only real I wonder I do wonder though, off the top of my head, like if you told Alabama football fans that they were allowed to win the national championship, but then next year they weren't allowed to watch the first 3 games. Not knowing like whether they win or lose, I don't care, but they just weren't allowed to watch the first 3 Alabama football games.
Sure.
I'd love to see a poll down there in Alabama of how many would actually take that. Like, you're guaranteed the national championship in basketball, but you can't watch the first 3 games. By the way, the first 2 games are probably against the Citadel.
Yeah, I think they'd be okay with it.
But I'm just saying, I don't know if they would. I think they'd be okay with it. Fair question for Ohio State fans as well, if we're being honest.
It also seems unfair as Cincinnati fans sit in misery. Alabama, they fire Nick Saban, or they don't fire him. He leaves.
He left.
He leaves Alabama, and then immediately following that, the basketball team gets to a Final Four.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things that are unfair being a Cincinnati
Life seems
sports
unfair.
fan, if we're being honest.
I guess.
It's not. That's the other part of the Reds fandom that I try to remember as well. Is like, there's a lot of us that have never seen winning ever. So to be frustrated from time to time is going to be natural. Like there's scar tissue that's built there. I mean, how many wins have we seen in the postseason of the Cincinnati Reds? How many wins?
2. I've seen 2.
I've seen 2. I'm 35 years old. I've seen 2 postseason wins. Not a single series win in the postseason have I seen. You try to stay positive. You try to stay
positive.
You try to stay positive. You try to stay upbeat, but that's scar tissue. That matters. So, of course, yeah, when things don't go right, I think there's going to be overreactions in this fan base until it actually happens, which I think is relatively fair. Kind of reminds me of, in a really bad analogy, it kind of reminds me when, if you have kids, you'll understand this. If you tell your kids that you're going to go do something that's relatively fun on a certain date, and then you tell them, we have to do that tomorrow. Mm-hmm. It's not a good reaction by the kids. They are expecting to finally get what they wanted. And then all of a sudden you got to tell them they got to wait and wait and wait. And that's what we've been doing at this fan base for quite some time. We've been waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. I do believe it's coming, though. I do believe it's coming, and I believe in this young core. I really do. And I don't know, ultimately, if it's not going to be Elly, it'll be Noelve. If it's not going to be Noelve, it'll be Matt McClain. Thoughts on that? We'll get your thoughts right after this. It's 1410 Wing AM. One thing I was thinking, though, really quickly while we were doing this.
Yeah.
It was brought up in the chat. I think it's a very fair point.
Sure.
Can't we just, it might take a little more work on our end. Can't we just take, some pauses every so often and know that's probably when we'll take a quick break on 1410? And then, quite honestly, just post-produce the breaks? Post-produce the fact that we can just sign off?
Well, yeah, I brought that up too. As long as we take those breaks,
We can't just have run-on sentences.
Correct.
We got to have some real good pauses there.
Yeah,
I think that's what we do. It seems preposterous to sit here and do this 5 times a show when everybody's that we know and love are watching on YouTube. Poll question of the day.
Here we go.
Of the day.
You don't think that's a good one? I think
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Poll question of the day: should we post-produce the breaks, or should we try to do it live and then laugh at us because we're never going to get out of here on time ever? I don't know if we're ever going to do it. Now, some might say, you're young. You guys have never really done this a whole lot. You can learn on the job. You can learn on the fly. You can take your time. Don't worry about it. No pressure. Those guys don't need breaks.
So here's the good news with these breaks, though.
Yeah, what about it?
And I don't know if you know this. I worked in radio.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. I don't know if you know it.
That.
So what happens is if you go long, the next one you just make it super short.
Right.
They call it a touch and go.
A touch and go is what they call it.
So you basically come back for 30 seconds.
I've seen that happen before.
And then you just ship it right back to break.
What a wild thing that is.
So that's what they do. It's to almost trick or fool the audience into thinking the commercial's not as long as it is, but it's going to be extra long. So that's called a touch and go. So if we needed to do that, we can surely do that.
All right.
That's big league. Big league journalism coming from Elliot. The touch and go.
The touch and go
sounds relatively inappropriate.
I like keeping it live. I think it'll be way funnier if we keep it live. And I heard that, and I didn't want to respond to it. Keep it live. I wanted to add this. I know this. We're talking about Bengals or whatever later. I want to add a couple more things about the Reds. I will say, given how down I was yesterday watching that game, And this is the difference between the Reds of old and this team. I still somewhat thought there was a chance. Once we got the second run, I was like, okay, here they come. I think it was 3 straight hits. And then I started to get excited. Now, obviously, we went, I think, 3 straight outs after those 3 straight hits. Yeah. But saying that, I did think there was a chance because this team never dies. And Nick Kirby did bring that up, I think, yesterday. The team is legitimately never out of the game no matter what. 9 runs, 10 runs, 8 runs, 7 runs. The Reds can find a way to come back and win these games because the offense, at least the guys we have out there right now, are good enough to make big hits when it matters. So
it's electric.
It is electric. It's an electric team we have, and that's the positive I'm taking away from yesterday. Even though we lost 9-4, we could have won it. We could have came back and won it if the stars aligned. They didn't align yesterday. But I do believe in the future, and you saw it on Easter Sunday, when you're down to your last strike and you think all is lost and the season is over on Game 3,
right?
They just fight right back. They fight right back, and they win the game outright.
I think when you take things from a micro view, it's very easy to overreact. We do that because it's a sports talk show, and I think it's fun. But when you look at it from a macro perspective all the time, there are series, I think, that you can go into, and you could just hope that you get one win. Now, that sounds absurd to say, hey, don't get swept here. But let's face it, there are times in this season that when you go to certain places and you play certain teams, you want to walk out with one win. And if you get anything outside of that or extra from that, it is a very, very cherry on top, per se. Shout out to United Dairy Farmers. But I think that when you go into Philly, you go into Atlanta, you go into L.A., you go into San Francisco, maybe even, I would argue, maybe go into Arizona. Those are series that when you go in and you assume, hey, what would be the most likable outcome, you'll take the one win. Because winning those series on the road probably more times than not are not going to happen. And that's just the fundamental understanding of that this is still a young team. And I don't know if we're there yet. That's the part of this that I don't know if there's that many fans that are going to buy or accept. But when Matt McLean goes down and Noel Marte goes down, I don't know if we're there yet. All right, Drew asks, please ask Elliot to read what his hoodie says. I can't take it anymore.
So it's an AJR sweatshirt. I don't know if you know the band AJR.
Yeah, you're a big AJR guy.
I'm a big fan, and this is a sweatshirt. It's the name of the album and a lyric from a song.
You got to read it. He wants to read it. They can't see it, Elliot. That's part of the – and also on the radio, they definitely can't see it. I mean, this guy's paid money on our stream, on our platform to give us money, and he said, I want to know what it says, and you didn't even single-handedly say what it says.
Chatterbox Reds ignored several super chats, and if it weren't for me, I would.
Was this a slander to me?
Was I
there?
Yes, you were.
I was there.
Yes, you were, and you almost forgot them. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't have read them. But I'll read it.
What do you mean it wasn't for you?
So here we go. This is an audible reading. It says, "The Maybe Man. I wish I was me, whoever that is."
All right. Fair enough. There's a lot of people in the chat that are suggesting that AJR is bad. That is going to put Ellie in a very, 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 very
a lot of them don't know. A lot of them don't know who they are. A lot of them don't listen to the music. Blackmore has certainly never heard of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I won't take slander, and that's fine. Everybody listens to their own music, and I'm not going to make fun of anybody's music.
Lovely.
So that's how I've grown as an adult, because a lot of people don't have very good music taste. I've found a lot of people.
And that's the cool thing about opinions. Everyone has them.
That's right.
And some would say
I think I have a very diverse taste in music. I love literally every genre except for heavy metal, which I think Casey actually does like, and that's okay because everybody has their own genre.
I like lots of music.
As long as they're not screaming at me, I can listen to it.
Casey, do you have anything to add before we get into DJ Reader? I don't know how much you make of this. Certainly, on my perspective, I don't know how much you can believe in what he's saying, but maybe you believe in it.
Thoughts. My last parting thoughts on the Reds. They're 3-2. They're very electric. I'm very excited about this team. I'm still very high on Elly. I just think he's fair to open criticism, and I hope that the fans out there on Twitter realize I'm not radical. I have expectations for Elly. I think I can adjust those as I see fit. And I hope you do as well. I hope you also change your expectations as things move forward throughout the season. So my final thoughts on that.
I will. My final thoughts are I'm going to continue to keep trolling this Reds fandom on Twitter because I think it's hilarious. Absolutely hysterical. Half the fan base thinks Elly is great no matter what he does. He could hit 0 for 4 million, and he'd still be young. But On the other side, some people want him shipped to Siberia with Jonathan India. So
Right.
I'm going to stay in the middle, and I'm going to keep my head. In the meantime, I'm going to troll everybody.
Hey, really quickly, last thing before you get into the DJ Reader situation, one thing that I found hilarious last night as I got down the rabbit hole that was outs above average on StatCast, which is what the saber metric that some will use to tell you how good somebody is defensively. I went through it and I was trying my best to figure it out. So I got on some Reddit threads and I started reading through these folks that are dive really deep into this, and they were trying to explain kind of what they believe the system does well and what maybe it doesn't do so well. And then all of a sudden someone was asking, which fielding metric do you use? There was 9 answers. The one that had the most likes was the one that you can win your argument with. That's what the answer was from the sabermetric community. Not which one was the best. Just, hey, go look at your favorite player and whichever one looks the best, use that one. Great. I'm gonna dive down deep into these weeds, and maybe I'll come out an analytical guy.
Which one's your least favorite metric?
I don't know.
Do you have a least favorite?
I mean,
I don't
have
least
a least favorite because if you ask most of the folks that use the analytics to their advantage, I'll be honest, they can't explain 100% how the whole system was created. That's my main problem. It'd be like, it's kind of like, and again, I don't want to get into politicals. We got to get to the DJ Reader stuff. It's going to go over, but I'm going to save all this for another day. No, yeah, but it's like, my thing is like, you ask somebody, hey, why do you believe in this piece of science or something? And they ultimately end up just saying, well, because somebody else believed in it. Not because they did their own research to figure out actually how they come up with the stuff. Wait until I show you tomorrow on Off the Bench. Mookie Betts, according to StatCast, the most difficult catch of his career. Wait until you see it. It's damning. DJ Reader.
My least favorite stat metric is Wobacon.
You just like to say that.
Yeah, because it's preposterous. What does that even mean?
I don't know. We'll find out tomorrow. We got to get to DJ Reader and his comments. Casey McAllister, take it away before we get ourselves into a situation where we don't stop talking about analytics. DJ Reader, your overall thoughts, Casey.
Yeah, so I've got a clip here of DJ Reader on the Kay Adams show. She just asked a very simple question, and he answered. I thought the answer was very interesting, so I'm going to play it for us, and I'll give you my thoughts after.
Either, but I know that you would have liked to stay in Cincinnati at some point, right? Why did the talks fall apart?
I think things just take time, and I felt like I was there doing rehab, doing my thing, and the talks just never happened. And then they didn't happen until free agency happened. And by that time, I'm like, I should probably go see like what else there's to offer, since it didn't seem like during that time that it was a focus of me being there. So, but that might not have been the case. Might have some other things to figure out, but that's just how I felt, and so just kind of how I took it. So I just really wanted to make sure I weighed all my options in at that time.
Yeah, so there's a couple things that are really interesting there, because I think we know that there's some rumors out there that the deal that was offered to DJ was kind of a slap in the face to him, a 1-year deal, something very cheap. He ended up getting something like a 2-year deal, worth a lot more than what was offered to him. And I just found it very interesting that now we've had multiple instances of notable Bengals players say the Bengals have not communicated with me, they waited until free agency, or they haven't communicated with me at all in terms of like T. Higgins and his contract negotiations. Now, there's obviously two sides to every story, to every coin. And I just find it really troubling. Like, why can't we get guys in the building to talk about contract negotiations, regardless of what the number is? Why does it seem like the Bengals, as soon as they hear a number from one side of the party, they just cut ties, throw them out to the wolves? Because at that point, DJ Reader, they had went out and signed, I can't remember the guy off the top of my head right now, but they replaced DJ Reader with another guy, a 3-tech. That's not his position.
Is it Rankin?
Yeah, Rankins. Sorry, excuse me. Sheldon Rankins. And it just feels like they could have had that door still open. They could have still tried to figure out a deal. They could have probably offered DJ the same deal, and I think the Bengals probably would have accepted it, to be honest with you. But I don't know that. But it just feels like to me the Bengals time and time again do things in the offseason that seem really silly to me. It just like why completely close the doors on these guys? Why not have that open communication throughout the offseason? He's already in your building. He's rehabbing. He's expecting to be here. He wanted to be here. And we just didn't even really give him a fair shake. We gave him one offer probably and shut the doors, and that's it. I don't know. I just don't agree with that business practice.
I think at some point it becomes an emotional decision, and you can't have that happen when you're in sports, when you're a front office. I think if you bring him back, you're bringing him back on emotions, how much you like the guy. I agree with you. I'm tired of organizations and franchises not talking to players that are on your team and maybe perhaps want to come back. You saw it with the Reds and Nick Castellanos. You see it here with DJ Reader and the Bengals. I don't fully understand that. At least talk to them. At least do them the courtesy. So he's not on talk shows talking about the Bengals. It just doesn't make sense to me. It seems like it's a lose-lose to not even talk to anybody.
Yeah.
But I do get the sentiment from the Bengals. Maybe they wanted to move directions.
Yeah,
He's nearly 30 years old.
Yeah.
And that's probably what they were doing.
Yeah,
Can I
that's
play
fair.
devil's advocate a little bit to both of you, though? I would – no, again, I'm not suggesting that this is the right move, but what happens in a situation where you had brought up your Cincinnati fandoms or Cincinnati franchises not really having conversations with folks? I think the reason that the Reds didn't have a conversation with Nick Castellanos is because they just didn't want him, period. Now, you can make that argument all day long. What if – again, it's a tough ask. I don't know if the Bengals would ever admit this. Is there any way in hell that they just did not want DJ Reader back, period? Or is that blasphemy?
I don't see. That's the thing too, is they could have been fine with walking away from DJ Reader, but it's not just DJ. Like initially they cut Mixon. I'm sure they didn't have plans to trade him until Houston called, right? They didn't go out seeking for trades until Houston came knocking on their door. They were going to do Mixon wrong. They are doing T. Higgins kind of dirty if his side is completely true. Not even getting to negotiate the entire year, and they just franchise tag him. They didn't even try to negotiate. And now we're going to go into this season with him on the franchise tag. We already know what happened with Jesse Bates and how that all played out, how that all shaked out. The Bengals could be wanting all of this to happen, but it just doesn't seem like it's in their best interest to let players that are notable walk away without having the door open, without having that conversation. Because it also, players talk to each other.
Yeah.
They will tell you, like, yeah, this is a great place to go to. Or they'll tell you, well, I gave it all for a couple years there, prime of my life, and they didn't even talk to me to renegotiate my deal, or they didn't even really talk to me to extend me. I don't know. I just don't like that practice. I just feel like even if there is no way that you can get a deal done with them, if the price is too far out there, then you have that conversation with them. You don't just leave them on red. You don't just leave them hanging dry, not knowing that what your value is to the team.
I think that's fair. The question of whether or not it actually ends up mattering is a whole other debate, right? You have certain ways in which you can run a franchise, and I don't know if there's really ever one way that you could say is the best way to go about it. We've talked at length, even on this show before, about what the Patriots have done in years past. They never really did it right by the player, but they had a lot of success, and one could argue maybe that was because of the way in which they went about their business. Or maybe just because they had great players, and that was the thing that actually was the main reason as to why they actually had success, is because it was Tom Brady, and it was because they had some great defensive players, and they had a good line and all these things, and the whole Patriot way got blown way out of proportion than what it truly actually was. Or maybe the Patriot way was a large part of their success. As far as the Bengals go in regards to how they handle business and whether it actually ends up mattering, I think most free agents – and I'm not saying that what you're saying is wrong. There could be a situation where maybe somebody does value the way in which of the rumor mill of what they heard from somebody else about whether or not you should go to this franchise or not, but the way they handle you on the way out of the door. But I think the vast majority of free agents, if we're being quite honest, comes down to years, comes down to guaranteed money, comes down to availability of being able to get on the field. And if you have those things aligned to what they want, then you're going to get that free agent, regardless of how your franchise has been perceived before or not. It's the same kind of concept to where you guys love working here. At least I hope you do. Or you love being around here. And that's all good and well. But I also know that if somebody comes in and they're going to triple your salary and you've heard, hey, this is a terrible place to work, you're still going to have a hard time contemplating whether or not you're going to leave, and you're more than likely going to leave based off the fact that you assume that it can't be that bad. I just think that's the nature of the beast when it comes to what it is and how you run a franchise. But to your point, and again, not that you need to believe in karma, but to your point, I think you have some merit in the idea that, hey, there's no reason that you shouldn't have at least asked DJ Reader what they're looking for. Yeah. And if you did ask them what they're looking for, and they said, hey, this is the number we want, because the ridiculous thing that we do as human beings when we come to negotiate things is it seems like in negotiations of any magnitude at all, one side of the aisle says a number that's absurdly ridiculous. The other side of the aisle says something that's absurdly ridiculous. And then the deal never gets done until the absolute last second because each side portrays that they have leverage, a la every single negotiation in the history of a players' union in a league of all time. So I don't know how much we make of this, but I do think it is damning a little bit to your point, Casey, of how they go about it. But I think, and this is the pushback I have to you guys, I don't know how much it actually matters. And I would also say to both of you, I guess I'm going to ask it again. I think that they just don't want to extend these guys. Well, and they don't know how to go to them and just say, hey, we don't want you here. So they just don't say nothing at all.
Well, that's fair, but they did that with Jesse Bates. They did that with T. Higgins.
And maybe they didn't want these guys. That's my point.
That to me, I don't think that's the case, though, because they franchised them. And then they don't talk to them at all. Like that, I don't know. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If you're wanting to part ways, you part ways. You don't do it like halfway. You don't keep the door open and never walk through it, right? Like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And I saw someone say that it's the agent that shut down conversations. That could be true. This is based off of what the players have said. We have no idea how the Bengals actually truly operated throughout this whole thing. They could have tried to negotiate with T. Higgins, and they just weren't able to actually get a deal done because they completely cut off communications, which I think would be stupid on T. Higgins' side because of how he played last year. I think that's maybe he's betting on himself, but I just don't think that's the correct way to go about it. But I don't know. It might not matter, but I thought it was interesting enough to bring up to talk about because it just kind of gives us a deeper understanding of how Bengals operate right now. And it's, to me, not a smart way.
My bottom line is it never hurts to ask. And when teams don't ask, it seems silly.
Do we know if DJ Reader got offered? And this is me just not knowing. I'm asking an open question. Maybe someone in the chat would know. Do we know if the Bengals actually made an offer?
I'm seeing that Drew Garrison said that, and I'm don't hold this to either me or Drew. These are all rumors and things that we've heard through the rumor mill, that they offered him a deal that was a slap in the face, very, very like a 1 year, $7 million type deal that he should probably get a lot more than that. He ended up getting a 1 year, if you want to look at it, a 1 year, $9 million deal that can turn into a 2 year, $20-something million deal if he plays well and they want to keep him. But he also said that he tried to call him, and I'm just seeing this in the chat just now, he tried to call him at the table in Detroit to try to get a better deal, and that just didn't surface. And he's saying that he's hearing that these numbers are true of what he's heard. So I'm gonna trust Drew on this one. If that is true, then they just didn't want him. But again, why wait until he got to Detroit to have those conversations? I think that's a little silly. Don't let them leave. Don't let these guys test the free agent market. Just see what they want. Have the door open. And if it's not something you want, then don't take the deal. But if you don't know, then if you don't try to renegotiate again, if you just close the door off the first try, then you'll never know if they want to come down or if they want to maybe even go up. Then you can for sure say no. You know what I mean? It just doesn't seem like it's a good business practice.
Right. And then to be fair to the Bengals, and I'm not to sit here and try to be the Bengals front office stand on the show today, but I'm just saying, like, to be fair to the Bengals, there's a chance they reach out to his agent. They said, hey, this is what we value him at, 1 year, $7 million. And the agent laughed in their face, basically. And then all of a sudden, perhaps, maybe they called the agent back and they said, maybe, again, this is all a bunch of hyperbole, or basically hypotheticals. And maybe they offered him 1 year, $7.5 million, and the agent was just like, no, we're not interested. And they left it at that. And then when they got to the negotiation table in Detroit, they called back to try to do what I guess any good agent would do, which is to try to see if they can get the Bengals to come up. Not so much to sign back with the Bengals, but basically to use that leverage against Detroit and say, hey, well, we're probably going to go back we're probably going to go back to Cincinnati if we get this, so you're going to have to up it even more. So it just turns into this big game of I don't know, even maybe chicken too. Like it could be chicken. Like I don't know how much of it was actually true. The Bengals, my main point to all this is I just think the Bengals got themselves in a spot where they felt like they had a better opportunity to go get better production from someone else somewhere else. And maybe there was a different change in philosophy about how they go about their defensive strategy, and whether Rankins, I don't think Rankins is he's not the same exact type player as DJ Reader, if I've paid attention enough. But my point is that maybe that was part of it, is they just don't want to go in the same philosophy with DJ Reader, although that's tough to convince a fan base because he was a fan favorite and he did play very, very good football. And maybe you could argue the franchise's most meaningful moments since all of us have been alive. So.
Interesting. Let's take a break, and when we come back, I have a mailbag, Casey.
All right.
I found a mailbag today.
A mailbag, that and more, next on 1410 Wing AM, your home to the best sports talk in Miami Valley. All right. Now I just got to bring us back in.
Yeah, you just got to bring us back.
Which is wild.
Welcome back.
That's just what we're going to do. All right, welcome back. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. I'm Trace Fowler. Elliot Rearing, before we went to break, you had suggested you have a mailbag.
Yes, I did.
Mailbag. Now, I know this very, very well. We've done this before. Casey, do you have the intro? To the mailbag. Because if you do, the next question I have that we got to figure out on our end is this thing actually not copyrighted? But you know what? The hell with it.
You can play it over the radio.
Run it anyway.
We just got a letter. We just got a letter. We just got a letter. I wonder who it's from.
All right. Elliot, who's it from?
Today's mailbag is from little Skip.
Skip
from Mr. Bayless's class. Now, Skip is a superstar shortstop who is going to be a big, big star. But he's only 10 years old playing on a high school varsity team. He hasn't had a hit since last year, and he commits 4 errors a game. Do you think their high school baseball coach should give up on him or believe that he's a big, big star?
Now, see, I thought we were done with this.
Done with
I
what?
thought we had gotten past this. I thought we were on our merry
That was
way
from
to enjoy
Skip.
the lovely Wednesday that was.
That was from Skip.
And
That's
here
the letter
we
you
go
chose.
again.
Out of all of the third graders out in the
And
world.
we had like 50 letters. They were all relating to that, so Skip wanted to know.
What would you say to Skip?
I would say to Skip, if you're the high school coach, you keep playing him because he's young and he's going to get better. No matter what.
Well, I think that the fair debate is, and this is a really good question, is how close is the team ready to compete? Is that team that's in high school, are they ready to win a state championship? Do they have a chance to win a district championship? Are they good enough everywhere else that you could argue that they should be something? Because if they are, then I think it's in the best interest of the rest of the team to put the best player available at that position. That's what I would say.
Can I ask you this, too?
Sure.
Do you think Noel V. Marte is getting a little bit of a pass here for destroying our infield?
I don't. We're not going to, just because one guy decided he's going to make 3 errors, we've beaten Noel V. Marte up enough to where I'm not doing the Noel V. Marte thing again for the rest of the season.
Okay.
He made a mistake, and you know what? I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt from the standpoint that I think that he took, and again, I'm not condoning cheating, but I don't think he was taking steroids to try to make himself a superstar in regards to like Barry Bonds per se. Shout out Barry, never failed a drug test though, so I don't want to slander him. I just would say I think he was doing it to try to come back from injury. He wanted to be ready and available for his team. It had little to nothing to do with, hey, I want to juice up so I can hit an extra 20 home runs, which in my mind maybe it just makes me sleep better at night. I'm not suggesting for a single second that taking steroids for one reason versus another makes everything A-okay. It doesn't.
It does not.
But it does make me feel better if I knew that deep down it's going to be unbelievably not provable. So you can never prove this. But if you could just give me the crystal ball, as they say, or God could come down himself and tell me, hey, Noelve took the steroids because he got bad advice from somebody that he needed to try to heal up and get this thing ready, back on track, so he was ready for the Major League season, I would feel differently, is what I would say, towards that situation.
Sure. I think that's fair. I just think right now I'm looking at the infield and I see the struggles defensively and I get upset. And I remember Matt McClain, he's dealing with an injury. TJ Friedel dealing with an injury. And we have one guy who made a selfish, silly mistake. And it's going to come back to bite the Reds, unfortunately. But we're not going to do a cherry on top yet. But this is pretty much going to be the cherry on top without calling it the cherry. If you want to call it the cherry on top, we can just do that.
Well, I think we should.
Okay.
It sounds like you're calling it already. Might as well get to it.
This cherry on top, I'm going to send it to Casey as we speak. Presented by United Dairy Farmers. They are the greatest. I can't call it a restaurant. They do serve food there, but it's a gas station. It's a coffee place. It's an ice cream shop, all in one.
Right.
It's pretty much like Disneyland when you go into UDF.
Convenience store.
It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. I love UDF. And today's cherry on top is that it is Jay Bruce's birthday. Jay Bruce was a Cincinnati Red, and he was a part of a couple of those exciting teams, one of them being the team, and I believe it was called Clinch Miss against the Houston Astros when he did this. I had to show it because it's his birthday, and that's one of maybe the most important Reds memory that I have in my lifetime. So
Which makes me sad.
Thank you, Jay Bruce. Now, how many years ago was that? Was that 2010?
Yeah.
14 years, huh?
Yeah, it's just sometimes.
What a wild 14 years it's been.
It's been this show's been back and forth like a roller coaster.
Good news is
it's just got to be soon. It's got to be soon, and I want to believe it's soon. But my gosh, like the fact of the matter is that is the thing that you get to hang your hat on as being a Cincinnati sports fan.
Will Benson's going to do that for us.
Winning a division.
Will Benson's going to do that for us this year. He has the most ninth-inning home runs in Major League Baseball since last year. Will Benson's my guy. He's going to give us a moment like that.
Look at you pulling out them stats at 11:50 in the show. That's an incredible.
Do you like that stat?
Incredible pull by you.
That's a good stat.
Yeah.
Casey?
I was going to just suggest that with the last 10 minutes, let's kind of preview this game and maybe give out some bets about the game, because I think that that people would really enjoy that, having something to look forward to, something to be more positive about the show.
We're positive. I'm positive. I couldn't be more positive. Last night was a tough loss. There's 162 games in this beautiful season. And yeah, after every loss, I'm going to be a little upset. But that's okay, because after every win, I'm going to be doubly excited.
That's right.
That's how I operate.
Isn't that how fandom works anyways?
Yes.
Like,
I don't
understand.
Fans.
Like, listen, I get the concept that you're tired of seeing people overreact to certain things. That's fine. One of 162, sure, you can use that and put that in your tool belt and use it and say that all year long if you'd like. I don't care. But I do know this. The Reds last year, they missed the playoffs by basically, what, 2 games?
Yeah.
2 games. And guess what? 2 games is really a 1-game swing. So I'm not suggesting that you get there and you can be on pins and needles every single second of every single pitch throughout the entire year. But fans are going to fan. And I'm not going to be upset at people that overreact or underreact.
Everybody gets to be a fan in their own way.
That's right. We're allowed to be just as excited about Spencer Steer's grand slam as we are an error that we feel like maybe cost the team a game. You fan however you wish. All I'm going to say is that nobody on this show is giving up on anybody on the Cincinnati Reds at all. And that includes All of us. And Lindsay, even though she's a Pirates fan.
Yeah, asterisks. Let me say this. Elly De La Cruz, and we're going to go through some bets. The probable starters today.
Are they going to play Weatherman?
I don't think so.
Speaking of way, what a great not to get off
I wasn't going
here.
to mention that today, but if you want to go on a victory lap, I'll do it.
Yeah, I think now's the time. For those that don't know, maybe it's your first time listening, first time watching. Elliot, he's a very, very what would you call yourself? A very, very
professional, Big J.
I don't know. I was going to say like premier weatherman. Prestigious. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you.
So yesterday we were told and pretty much the sirens were going off and that Cincinnati was going to be a war zone for rain and hail and wind. I get home yesterday, and by the way, during the day, beautiful sunshine all the way through. In fact, it never rained here. I believe it rained for about 30 seconds. Casey and I went to lunch yesterday, and it rained for about 30 seconds then. I drove all the way home with the windows down. Sun was shining, wearing sunglasses. And by the time I got home, I'm like, uh-oh, here come the clouds. So I'm like, okay, here's the storm. Here it comes. It rains for about 30 minutes. And then it stops, and then it's sunshine again. So I don't know who was in charge of that prediction. And obviously some places got it worse. But it at least seems in the Cincinnati area, not a lot of places got touched as hard as they thought it would.
Yeah, and listen, I think that there is you actually have the bit of making fun of weathermen and women, meteorologists. I think is the professional term to use there. But there is something to be said about they're doing their best to use analytics. They're using radars. They're using science. They're using metrics. All the things that you could possibly use to your advantage to try to predict something. And their problem ultimately isn't their fault. They're using the statistics and the availability to what they have in front of them.
The analytics.
To what the analytics of what they think is probable of what's going to happen. Yeah. The problem is that we're humans. Yeah. And humans come up with the satellite dishes. And humans come up with the science behind all of it. And humans are the ones that try to basically make the systems in and of themselves. See, somewhere along the lines is humans had a touch on whatever is built. Now, AI, at some point, perhaps we're in a simulation. Who knows? But that's a story for another day. But perhaps AI will get to where humans aren't even relevant anymore. I don't know. But I know this. If humans touch it, there's a possible error involved. I'm not going to be upset at the weather crews for trying to keep us safe. They do their very best. And ultimately, at the end of the day, all they can do, Elliot, is rely on, what would they call that? Analytics.
Sure.
To try to figure out whether or not it's going to rain or not rain.
I wonder what that storm's Wobacon.
Turns out sometimes it can be wrong.
I wonder what that storm's Wobacon plus was.
Trying to predict the future.
-4. What do you think his war was? What do you think that storm's war was? And listen, there was a meteorologist yesterday went on Twitter and said, all those people trolling, where are they now?
Yeah, I've seen that.
That's kind of wild. But okay. Listen, I credit all the meteorologists in their field. They're very good at their job. They only listen to what the analytics tell them. I will say this. If I was as wrong as a meteorologist in Cincinnati is consistently, I would have been fired long ago. But who knows? Good for them. Casey, you want to talk about the game today and bets? The game's not going to happen, but if it does happen, Frankie Montas is taking on Zach Wheeler. That is a tough matchup there. Frankie Montas looked dominant. If Frankie Montas can give us an opening day performance every single night, we're going to win a lot of baseball games. That's just a fact.
Well, he'd probably win the Cy Young.
I will say, if I'm going to be honest, can I be honest with you?
You're not very honest a whole lot.
I took an Elly De La Cruz home run future before the season starts. I'm starting to get concerned about it.
Oh, yeah? Well, if we're being honest, I think every time I've read a book that says every time someone says, "Can I be honest with you?" they usually aren't all the way honest.
Yeah.
So were you being honest there or not?
I was being completely honest.
Okay.
Also, if you look at the stats for if you want to bet at a home run better today, Elly De La Cruz is second last on this list, behind only one player, and it's a Red. Can you guess who it is?
Bubba Thompson.
Tyler Stevenson.
Yeah. Okay.
Plus 1,060. Plus 1,060. To hit a home run for Tyler. It's plus 900 for Elly. I'm going to keep hammering plus 900 for Elly because eventually he's going to find it. And once he happens, all you haters out there, you're going to be silenced.
You do realize, I just want you to know, though,
sure.
But I want there to be a clear asterisk here because sometimes, like I said, I don't know if that brain runs on full capacity at all times. You do know that if you keep betting that after the 9th game that you've done that in, which I don't know how many games you're already in, you actually are the loser no matter what.
Interesting. We're not at 9 yet.
How many are we at? Just so we.
We're at 5.
Okay, we're at 5, so we can keep track. So you have 4 more games that you're allowed to do this on. If you don't hit it, then you at that point are 100% losing money.
Unless he goes back-to-back and back-to-back nights, and then I'm up big.
Well, that's a different story. Yes.
So that's what we're waiting on. But that's it. That's the Reds. Do you have a bet, Casey, if they play?
I am probably going
I have Jake
to
Fraley 2 bases as well. 2+ bases.
Ooh, Will Benson 2+ bases feels really safe. I don't know what that is. I'm going to look it up right now, but he just always seems to, when he hits the ball, it's a double, and it's usually a tie the ball game.
Yep.
So I'm going to go with that.
All right.
Total bases.
Any bet for you, Trace?
I'm not going to say my bet. I'm not going to bet on today's game. But oddly enough, I don't wager on a lot of baseball. I don't wager on the Reds a whole lot because I don't want to get myself in a position where, one, I already care probably too much about whether they win or lose. I don't want to get in a spot where it hurts more if they lose, and I also don't want to have to root for the opposite side. It does feel like there's some regression coming, though, for being honest. I don't know. What's the over-under in the game?
Casey, do you have that?
The over-under on the game is 7.5.
All right.
I'll take the over.
I would take the over.
Yeah.
I would take the over.
Pretty sure they've hit the over every single time.
And I'm not, again, trying to be negative on this show, but, ultimately the Phillies are a pretty good roster. I think the Reds are going to score a few runs at least. So then you find yourself in a position where, 5-3, you win. 5-3, you win. Either way, you win 5-3. All right. That will do it for a Wednesday edition of Off the Bench. Hopefully we all can sing Kumbaya, crisscross applesauce, hold each other's hands in our big round circle with a fire in the middle of it, and we can all just realize that it is just baseball after all. You don't have to have personal attacks. You don't have to try to be overly aggressive one way or the other. Whether you're on the side of the aisle that you think Elly De La Cruz should go to AAA, which I think is blasphemous. I think that's absurd. I think it's ridiculous. And you could be on the other side of the aisle that says he's every single time he does anything at all that he's young and he can't make, he can't be criticized for making mistakes, and that he will eventually become a great player no matter what. You're all in on the fact that he's going to be a great player. Maybe you're right. We'll find out. I hope that side of the aisle that I mentioned on the latter end is the correct one. No one's rooting against anybody here, but I think that they're all major league players, and we should treat them as such. All right, we have Chatterbox Reds later today, weather pending, of course. Keep an eye out on the old X.com app for that, and as always, like the stream, click the little notification bell in the top right-hand corner of the screen, and that will let you know when we go live each and every single time. And we will be tomorrow live, better than ever, on 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. This has been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers.